Hello, and welcome to the Wine Enthusiast Podcast, your serving of drinks culture and the people who drive it. I'm Jacy Topps. This week, we're talking about no-low alcohol culture. The rise of NA spaces, retail stores, and beverages suggests that people are drinking less. And not just during dry January and sober October. There's a growing trend. But has that trend developed into a movement? I sat down with Laura Silverman and Emily Heintz to discuss the phenomenon in the beverage space. Laura is the founder of Zero Proof Nation, an NA resource platform. And Emily is the founder of Sèchey, a retail bottle shop in Charleston specializing in no-low alcohol beverages. So listen on as we discuss the increase of NA spaces, the common misconceptions about the category, how the alcohol industry can help NA culture, and how bottle retailers educate consumers and choose what goes on their shelves. Every glass of wine tells a story. These stories reveal hidden histories, flavors, and passions, and sometimes they unravel our darkest desires. In Wine Enthusiast's newest podcast, Vinfamous, journalist Ashley Smith dissects the underbelly of the wine world. We hear from the people who know what it means when the products of love and care become the source of greed, arson, and even murder. Each episode takes listeners into the mysterious and historic world of winemaking and the crimes that have since become Vinfamous. This podcast pairs well with wine lovers, history nerds, and crime junkies alike. So, grab a glass of your favorite wine and follow the podcast to join us as we delve into the twists and turns behind the all-time most shocking wine crimes. Follow Vinfamous on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and be sure to follow the show so you never miss a scandal. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. Hi, I'm Jacy Topps. My guest today is Laura Silverman. Laura is the founder of Zero Proof Nation, a resource platform elevating non-alcoholic beverages and its lifestyle. Hi, Laura. Welcome. I'm so glad you can join us today.
Hi, Jacy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So your site has been getting a lot of press, and I want to kind of know what actually Zero Proof Nation is. So for our listeners who aren't familiar, what is Zero Proof Nation and why did you start it?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So I'll start with what it is, and then I'll go into why I started it. Zero Proof Nation is essentially what I like to think of as a fully comprehensive resource hub for the non-alcoholic beverage culture and the people who drink these beverages. It has directories for non-alcoholic bottle shops, booze-free bars, beverages, of course, which I had started putting a beverage directory together before there was even a such thing as a non-alcoholic bottle shop. And it was back in late 2019, early 2020, before the pandemic. So a lot of these brands that were just kind of coming up were selling direct to consumer. And so I wanted to put as many beverages together as I could in different categories. But it started as an Instagram feed where I featured non-alc beverage founders and some people in the space and really focusing on the founders in a world at that time that told them maybe they might have done better or done better business starting an alcohol brand because it's just easier. I wondered why they started non-alc. There's usually a story involved. Oftentimes there was a story where either the founder or someone close to them had issues with addiction in their family, or they just found themselves getting older and wanting to drink less alcohol. They still did drink mindfully, but wanted to provide an option that had inclusivity for everyone. And it was just really interesting getting to know people and why they cared about non-alcoholic. And speaking of why people care, I should probably tell you why I care, and that's rooted in my own story. I'm not sure when this will go live, but on July 14th, I will turn, or will have turned, depending on the airing date, 16 years sober. So I got sober at a very young age, at 24, and there were no options for people who didn't drink for whatever reason. Again, there's a huge sobriety spectrum out there, whether that means that you're just not drinking for tonight, or you're doing like a dry January or a sober October. So that's a month. Or of course we have our 9-month contingent, the people who are pregnant and need to not drink alcohol. And then people who are taking breaks for longer or permanently. There were no options really to speak of. There was, Coke, other sodas, O'Doul's, and club soda, but there really wasn't anything sophisticated. And if you asked a bartender to make you a quote mocktail back then, it would probably be like really, really sweet or tart or sugary, an afterthought. Most of these beverages were afterthoughts for people like me and other people in the community. So it's really only been in the past 5 years or even less that we've seen such a huge rise in non-alcoholic beverages, in adult non-alcoholic beverages. But the reason I created this was for myself, because I wanted a resource, and I knew that if I wanted it, other people might want it too. And it's become my passion. And interestingly, there are a lot of people in this industry that aren't sober. They just believe in health and wellness and options for all. So it's a little bit more rare these days to find someone like me who's 100% sober. But I know that most of my audience and community are mindful drinkers or sober curious, or they consider themselves alcohol free, but not necessarily in recovery, say.
Thank you for sharing your story, Laura. That's amazing.
My pleasure. My honor.
So, like you said, there has been a little bit of a shift and a rise, and the numbers don't lie, right? Like, people are consuming alcohol differently, whether it's lower alcohol or no alcohol. So I kind of want to know, like, your point of view. Do you think that there's this sober movement? Like, doing research for this podcast, I was like, it was all these articles, like the sober movement. So is there a movement, or what do you think?
Yes, absolutely. It's had so many different iterations up until now. I think we're really in a place right now where people are drinking less, and I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it for a variety of reasons, obviously, but people are finding themselves in a place where they want to make healthier decisions. And that might not mean going sober altogether. It might mean drinking less, but there is this sober curious and sober and alcohol-free, non-alcoholic movement that is definitely afoot. And maybe some people would have thought it was a trend that is going to go away or would have gone away by now. And it's entirely possible that, this was on the rise for a while, pre-pandemic, slowly. But once the pandemic hit, it kind of took an exponential vertical direction going up. And I really don't think it's a trend anymore. I think it might be trendy, but it's not necessarily something like a fad that's going to pass. I think we're really in a place where hospitality is seeing these adult non-alcoholic beverages as a way to make money. And rightly so. If they didn't have anything on their menus, it would be leaving money on the table. There are so many people that want to space out drinking alcohol, maybe drink a session cocktail, which would take longer, and intersperse that with non-alcoholic beverages. And of course, then there are all the people that don't drink. So I think we're really finding ourselves in this heyday of non-alcoholic culture, non-alcoholic movement, whether we call that a sober movement. Sober has a variety of meanings for people. It can be a loaded word for some, but at its core, it just means not intoxicated. So in that sense, in that definition, I definitely think there is a huge movement. But let me take myself out of the equation for a second, because it's all I think about all the time. And I realize that it's not necessarily mainstream for everyone. However, I think we are starting to, and when I say we, I mean me and the others in the movement, I think we're really starting to infiltrate into the mainstream. And it's evident by all of the press that beverages are getting, bars, bottle shops. There's all these things popping up all the time. JetBlue, the airline, recently partnered up with Athletic Brewing, and they're having Athletic on some of their flights. And I really do think that it's a steady movement, and people can come and go. They can do a 1 month sort of stint in it, and that's fine too. But if it plants the seed of just becoming a little bit healthier, I'm not here to be a prohibitionist, and I really do think that there are a lot of people who can drink alcohol safely and who want to drink wine and beer and spirits for the taste and for what it represents maybe historically, and if there's any sort of tie to their own culture. But there is evidence that shows that alcohol is toxic, and there's more and more research coming out now that is showing that virtually no amount can be considered healthy. That being said, again, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. I'm not here to shame anyone. And frankly, I just want there to be options for everyone. So if I go out with friends who are drinking alcohol, I want there to be options for them to switch off with. But selfishly, I want options for myself. And I think we're finding, because this is a movement now, we're finding that there are more venues out there. There are more retail opportunities to get non-alc, whether it's e-commerce or brick and mortar.
Well, I'm glad you brought up actual venues and brick and mortar places, because, for listeners who aren't familiar, including myself, what is the difference between what, like, a quote unquote bar, a typical bar, and a non-alc bar? Is it solely just the drinks that they serve?
Yeah, that's it. It's just the drinks. You would, if you went into any of these booze-free bars, whether it's a brick and mortar place like Sands Bar in Austin or a pop-up like Absence of Proof in New York, and the founder, Elizabeth, does pop-ups all over the country now. There are some young women in LA called Zero Proofed, and they do a lot of pop-ups in LA. And really the only thing that's different is the level of alcohol by volume in the beverages, because the vibe is just like, and the vibe is just like any bar. And there's a bar for everyone, right? So there's like a fancy cocktail bar, there's a dive bar, there's a karaoke bar, there's a gay bar. We're finding that there are more of these subcultures in booze-free bars now. And it's really something kind of wild to see. So yeah, it's really, the only difference is that the beverages served don't have booze in them, but it's just the same as any other bar, and it's for anyone. We're not saying, do you drink alcohol at the door? If you do, you're not allowed. No, anyone can come in, and it can be a starting place for some people. It can be an ending place for some people, or it could just be the place to hang out if you decide that you just don't want to drink alcohol for the night.
Yeah, I like that. I think that kind of invokes inclusivity. I think that the food and beverage industry, especially the wine industry, has been talking about inclusivity over the last, 5 years. And we've been talking about it in terms of gender and geographical and winemaking and marketing and things of that nature and language. But I guess we haven't really talked about making sure that there's space and products for people who don't drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge thing, Jacy, because, I don't go to wineries anymore. It's not that I don't like them. I think they're beautiful places. They often have good cheeses and mustards and all the charcuterie. But usually wineries, especially the fun independent ones or local to the terroir that you're in, just don't have the financial capabilities to de-alcoholize wine and have a non-alcoholic option on their tasting menus, and so they wouldn't necessarily have flights for people who don't drink alcohol. But you'll find the much larger wine brands have that capability built in, and of course there are a lot of individual brands that are starting out completely non-alcoholic and staying that way. And I'm not a scientist or even play one on TV, but there are a variety of ways to make non-alcoholic wine and non-alcoholic beer. And some of these companies don't alcoholize in the first place and then de-alcoholize. They might just use verjus and unfermented grapes. So I guess all that is to say that there's a huge element of inclusivity in the wine industry and the beer industry that is just starting to sort of be uncovered, and that is in having non-alcoholic options for people, and that includes people who are also drinking alcohol. They just might want to drink less, And so it's always good to offer something else.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you brought up the different types of products because I guess beer has always had a head start when it comes to no alcohol or low alcohol, right? Like non-alcoholic beer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I know a lot of people are saying that they've had beer that actually tastes like beer, and it's not beer, it's non-alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Are the producers getting this right? Is the taste, the smell? If people who like want to do lower alcohol or no alcohol, is the experience still there? Are people still getting their experience even though it's not alcohol?
Gosh, that's such a good question because yes, and there's a range of quality in products. And I had a really unique experience in London earlier this year when I was a judge at the inaugural World Alcohol Free Awards, where across 2 days, all of the judges tasted 400 different beverages across a multitude of categories. And I tasted a lot of really good wines and a lot of okay wines and some pretty bad ones. And of course, they will all be unnamed, mostly because I have no idea what I tried. It was all blind,
Right, they're blind.
as a competition should be. But there's really a variety in quality, and there are some really phenomenal producers in my mind. A lot of them are domestic now to the US, but the sort of the heartbeat of the non-alcoholic beverage movement started in the UK, and there's a lot of innovation in the UK. You probably have heard of Seedlip. That was one of the first sort of adult non-alcoholic spirits, if you will, and it's really a botanical distillate, and there's a whole category of those now inspired by Seedlip. But there's a fantastic wine brand that does sparkling and stills based out of the UK called Noughty, Noughty, and they're phenomenal. I just tried for the first time a Chilean non-alcoholic wine brand, and I believe we all know that Chile has pretty phenomenal wine.
Yes,
A lot of
yes.
wines come from Chile, but not a lot of non-alcoholic wines do. And so, I mean, I should just let all of the listeners know that I haven't had alcohol in almost 16 years, essentially 16 years. So I don't really remember the mouthfeel of it. I don't remember how it necessarily made me feel, but I do kind of remember tastes and textures and effervescence. And in that regard, I think a lot of producers are getting it right. And if they're not getting it right in their first production, they listen to feedback and they get it right the next time. And I know that a lot of beverage producers, small and large, and also sort of the crossover alcoholic, the big guys in big alcohol, many of them have non-alcoholic wings to their company. So of course we've got, Heineken and Heineken Zero, and Tanqueray has a Tanqueray Zero. Martini and Rossi have their zero lines. So a lot of the big companies are producing non-alcoholic too. But in terms of wine, I really do think that there are some people that are just nailing it, and it's really cool to see, and it's really cool to taste, obviously, all of these new products, and there's just all this innovation that's constantly happening. And so I think the mark of a really good producer and a really good organization is one that listens to feedback from its audience, and if something's not working quite right, to iterate and reiterate and make sure that it's right the next time. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, and people can check out my site for some inspiration. But there's tons of bottle shops, individual bottle shops, and also, if you go to big box wine stores like Total Wine and More does a lot of really great stuff in the spirits, mixers, and non-alcoholic beer. I think there's still a ways to go with their non-alc wine selection, but they're starting to. I think they just brought in a couple of brands that I drink myself, so that's good.
Yeah. So, do you think that the booze industry, the brands, the media, are we helping or are we hurting, or should we get out of the way? What do you think?
Wow. I don't think the alcohol industry is hurting the non-alcoholic industry. I think there are some things that could be done to better enable coexisting and making sure that there's that element of inclusivity. So there's a lot of, I don't know if you've heard of just the low alcohol movement as well. There's no and low. So there's the opportunity to go sort of halvesies with certain spirits, for instance. And there's a brand out there called Spiritless that essentially has that as their motto. It's less is yes and go halvesies, mix full-proof whiskey with half zero-proof whiskey. And that's a way to sort of work together with both alcohol companies and non-alcoholic companies. I also think that, just like most non-alcoholic beverage companies are likely not going to go into producing alcohol, a lot of alcoholic companies are not necessarily going to open their portfolio to non-alc, and that's okay too. But for those that are able to and are interested in having sort of another wing to their company, I think it would be great to listen to the non-alc movement, and many are. And the very nature that I'm on a wine enthusiast podcast means that you're listening, and I appreciate it. I definitely think there's more opportunity to work together and to sort of promote a healthier way of drinking. And that doesn't necessarily mean eradicating. It doesn't mean eradicating alcohol, but just encouraging trying new things. And I think that's a diplomatic way of saying that there's still a ways to go, but there's not any overt hate towards the non-alcoholic movement. And if anything, we're bringing more customers to bars and restaurants that might feel kind of ousted or just feel like they're not included with a seat at the table. But we're by having options on menus, by having options in a company's range, there will be more devoted followers. There'll be more people drinking beverages at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that being part of the media, I think that language is really important. I know you talked about basically calling it halvesies or basically saying that, there's certain alcohol that's healthy and then, like it's not, and I think here at Wine Enthusiast that we've actually get that right. If people want to consume alcohol, that's by all means, but don't call it healthy because it's not healthy. It's for your enjoyment, and that's just what it is. So I think that language is a big part of how people. Sometimes language, I feel like language can get in the way and it can definitely hurt the situation. So I think that's kind of where my question came from. Like, is the language that we're using better and can it get better?
I think it can absolutely get better. And there's, a lot of people out there have feelings about the word mocktail. I'm one of the people that has some feelings about it, but I don't hate the word. I just don't really use it in my own life. Because for me, again, I'm speaking on my own behalf, no one else's, that it just kind of connotes somewhat of a kiddie beverage or something that is an afterthought. Now, there is sort of like the new mocktail, which is the type of mixed cocktail that doesn't have any kind of spirit analogs, as Derek Brown of Mindful Mixology says. He calls them analogs. So like it doesn't have a non-alcoholic whiskey or rum or gin or whatever. It's just like botanicals and maybe juices and alcohol-free bitters or something. It might just be crafted without any kind of alcoholic analog intention. But then for the drinks that do use those analog spirits, I prefer calling them just non-alcoholic cocktails, NA cocktails, zero proof. You have to be somewhat careful with that, even though I know I'm zero proof nation, because if a brand is going to call themselves zero proof, they better hope that they're 0.0 ABV, just because there are some people drinking these beverages that are very highly attuned to having alcohol in their system, whether it's related to a history of addiction or there might be some allergies and or people who observe halal. They can't have any kind of alcohol content. So there definitely needs to be more massaging and attention toward language as it pertains to describing these beverages. But there's also regulatory issues too. And I believe you can't call NA beer on the label. I think you have to call it like a non-alcoholic brew or a malt beverage or something based on FDA regs. So that's a whole other podcast. But there's a lot around language for sure. And I like what's going on in the alcoholic space. I mean, I watch things, I see things, and I think there's a lot of really good that's happening with more diverse producers, with more attention toward sustainability. And I think there's a lot of that in the non-alcoholic beverage scene too. And we care about a lot of the same values, and then for people who are in non-alc, we kind of go one step further because many, but certainly not all, many beverages are healthy. But I can't do a blanket statement and say that every single non-alcoholic beverage is healthy. I mean, there's sugar content, there's preservatives, there's this, there's that. It's up to every individual drinker to be discerning about what they put in their systems.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is a lifestyle for you and for many others. Do you think that this is going to be a trend that goes away? Like, not for you and other people, but as far as marketing and media and the way we're talking about it now, is this going to go away, or are we going to stop talking about this, or is this going to be forever?
I don't think it's going to go away. I think we're going to see the curve normalize a little bit, and it already is starting to. So I'm kind of looking mentally at this graph of sort of the rise of non-alcoholic beverages pre-pandemic, and it was always rising, but it was very, very glacial and almost horizontal. When the pandemic hit, it almost shot up immediately in a vertical, and everyone got on that bandwagon for a variety of reasons, like I touched on before, whether it was because alcohol brands couldn't ship directly to consumers and we were all sort of at home and they had to produce different products that were non-alcoholic, or non-alcoholic products were just kind of forming and coming to be by other producers. The curve definitely like took a sharp straight up turn. I'm not making sense, but sorry, the graph kind of shot up. And now what we're seeing is a little bit more of a normalizing of that curve, so to speak. It's still increasing. It's increasing a lot more than it was pre-pandemic, but it's not sort of the same exponential vertical growth as it was before. But I mean, all of the stats out there, everyone is doing statistics related to these beverages are showing that the valuation is just out the roof. I mean, I think there was a statistic out there by like 2034, it'll be like in the trillions or something. I don't know. Please don't quote me on that. But it's definitely not going away for sure. Whether or not it's as in the forefront of everyone's mind, it may taper back a little bit. It's still kind of novel and new, even though for me it feels like it's been going on for years and years. I look back and it's pretty nascent in sort of what we're seeing now. But I don't think it's going away at all. And I think if anything, people are seeing that they want to drink less. Maybe they're not going to give it up entirely. That's okay. But maybe they just want to drink less and they want options for weeknights. Maybe they don't want to drink on a weeknight, but they want to have an Aperol Spritz. Well, they can have that. They can have like Wilderton bittersweet aperitivo, and they can have something with Tennyson or the Pathfinder, or all these phenomenal brands out there that provide the same experience, the same taste profile, the same ritual without any risk of a hangover. So I definitely think we're still going to see it increase. Maybe there won't be press about it every single day, but maybe there will be. I hope there will be. For my sake. And for everyone's. Yeah.
Laura, I have one more question for you.
Of course.
What's in your glass? What are you drinking these days?
Oh gosh, so many different things, and I thought you might ask that. So I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell you that it's not that exciting right now. I'm drinking liquid IV from a water bottle because I just worked out and I have to stay hydrated and have lots of electrolytes. But I'm loving RTDs and NA beers and just kind of cracking open a can. I had a can of Health Aid, passion fruit and tangerine kombucha earlier today, but I am definitely going to have some sort of beer tonight. I love my friends at Athletic. I'm also really, really loving Go Brewing out of Chicago. They're doing some really phenomenal things, and they're solely a non-alcoholic brewery. And I also really enjoy wines with dinner and cooking, and it's just kind of fun to feel like I'm a grown up, and have that kind of a ritual too. So I have 5 bar carts and a beverage fridge now. It's a bit of a problem. I get sent a lot, of course, but I also buy a fair amount, and I'm trying to buy less because I have to go through what I have. But there's so many different categories out there for just about any mood. Functional, as you probably know, is having a huge movement right now. Functional beverages are everywhere. Yeah, I have something different for whatever mood I'm in. And I do want to give a shout out to Pink Cloud Beverages, because I am loving their CBD cocktails inspired by flavors of Hawaii. And it's sort of it reminds me of like Spindrift, but with Hawaiian flavors and CBD as well. So there's just a lot of good stuff out there, and it's a really fun place to discover and explore.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a treat.
Hey, wine lovers! Summer's here, and we have some hot news for you. Wine Enthusiast Magazine and Wine Enthusiast Catalog have come together to launch a new Wine Enthusiast at wineenthusiast.com. It's the ultimate destination for all things wine and drinks. From expert wine ratings, reviews, and thought-provoking stories to wine accessories, glassware, gifts, and storage. You'll easily find it all and more at the new wineenthusiast.com. Visit now to discover fresh content like how Cab became king in Napa Valley, and shop fun new arrivals like outdoor accessories and barrel-inspired lawn games. Don't miss a drop. Visit wineenthusiast.com today and sign up for free content and first alerts to savings, news, product announcements, and more exciting things yet to come.
My next guest is Emily Heintz. Emily is the founder of Sèchey, a beverage retail store based in Charleston, South Carolina. Welcome, Emily. I'm so glad you can join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Sèchey is a retail shop. Can you explain what actually you specialize in and why you decided to open the store?
Sure. So sachet is a nod to the French word for dry. So we specialize in alternative beverages, which could be anything from dealcoholized wine, beer, distilled spirits without alcohol, to functional beverages. And we designed Sèchey as a retailer around the celebration and socialization and connection, but not necessarily around alcohol. It's really about providing alternatives for us to celebrate and socialize without leveraging alcohol.
Okay, great. And I know that we Wine Enthusiast has kind of given you a couple of nods as well, as far as, a non-alcohol beverage store to check out. So you're
Yeah, it's
definitely
been
on the
great.
radar.
I find that wine is an excellent way to start your sober curious journey, and just to think about alcohol in a different way, because you still get a lot of the benefits, from pouring wine into your glass, but not a lot of the negative effects.
Okay, great. So my previous guest, Laura Silverman, who I know are familiar with, I think she did a great job in enlightening us as far as about the non-alcohol beverages. But I wanted to get your perspective because you are in retail. Have you seen like an uptick in interest in non-alcohol, or is the demand higher these days?
The demand is absolutely higher. We're right on King Street, so we get a lot of foot traffic and visitors to Charleston. So they'll walk in thinking we are a traditional bottle shop, and it's amazing to see the surprise that we carry alternative options and dealcoholized wine and beer. But then we also have the customers who are looking specifically for alternatives that seek us out. And I would say there is equal enthusiasm across both groups, because while they probably do drink alcohol, they're looking for options, and recognizing that there are other options out there. It's just about finding them and the convenience of them.
So you sell products that are no alcohol, obviously. Do you also sell products that are lower ABV?
So certain states, you're required to get a beer and wine license, even if the ABV is below 0.5%. So right now we carry 95% alcohol-free products that fit that under 0.5%, but we do get requests for low alcohol. So we've started to carry traditional wine to complement the assortment from a convenience factor. And we really want to embrace everyone's relationship with or without alcohol. And we found that that was the best way to get customers to come in, is to really offer them a variety.
So that's a state-by-state thing.
It is a state-by-state thing. Yes, but technically Sèchey is a concept for the alcohol flexible. So the majority of our customers do have some kind of relationship with alcohol and are just looking for options, like different tools in their chest, right? Like maybe they're going out to a work event and would like to get up early the next morning. So they choose a de-alcoholized version of wine or a cocktail with spirit-free tequila for their evening.
Okay, and I'm curious, as far as I know, cannabis obviously is state by state these days. And obviously, I know South Carolina does not legalize THC. Do you have any products that have CBD in them?
So we do. We carry CBD and functional beverages, which really is a category that includes nootropics, adaptogens, plant-based botanics. And in fact, in South Carolina, Delta 8 and Delta 9 are legal. So we do have THC, but it is the type of THC that was legalized in the 2018 Farm Bill, which is specific to Delta 9. It's a hemp-derived THC product, and Delta 8, which is synthetic THC.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I would say, like, equally to people coming in looking for alternatives without alcohol, we have people coming in looking for a functional beverage, which we categorize as a product that would give you or replicate the feeling that alcohol might give you, whether it's like creating a buzz or relax you, help you sleep, calm you down, all of those. So the THC products fall in that category.
I'm pretty curious about this because I feel like, I talked to Laura previously, and she said that she feels it's definitely a movement, like the no alcohol is definitely a movement. Do you feel, I know your background is in sales. Do you feel that part of that movement is because of the legalization of cannabis lately? Or is it just because people are just kind of wanting no alcohol?
I think that during COVID, and this is just my personal experience and the stories that people have shared, we all relied a little bit too heavily on alcohol and emerged from COVID wanting to socialize, but also recognizing the negative effects that traditional alcohol have on your sleep, on your body, on your mood, and we're looking for alternatives. And then, as we emerged from COVID as well in the 2018 Farm Bill, and the legalization of cannabis, those two movements are converging. So you're really seeing the impact today. And someone like Sèchey, our retail assortment, which covers both. We want to carry a variety, and you choose how you want to celebrate, whether it's with cannabis, de-alcoholized product, or traditional alcohol.
How do you find your brands?
Well, I am always in market looking for new brands based on my personal preferences, but I recognize that, those are also limited. So we tend to ask for recommendations from customers. We look through Instagram. Some of the brands that I already work with will recommend other brands. And then as Sèchey has created, ourselves as a leader in the movement, brands will come to us thanks to, wine enthusiasts and others who have put us out there as an alcohol-free alternative bottle shop. But it's a constant. There's so many great options. Whittling them down and curating them is the hardest part, because what I might like might not be what someone else likes, but we want to have a variety where someone feels like there is a product for them that they can incorporate into their drinking routine.
That's great. Also, like I know the wine and beer industry, there's been lots of talk about inclusivity and diversity. And do those things matter basically when you're stocking your shelves? Is like, are you interested in women-led products or producers that are people of color or LGBTQ? Does that matter for you as a brand?
It does matter. And I do try to be diverse. The traditional alcohol industry is incredibly male dominated. So I find it really refreshing to be able to support brands new to the beverage space. So we carry it all. We carry brands specific to LGBTQ. We have a lot of female founded brands, women of color. I think I'd like to continue to expand that assortment and even designate areas where we can highlight those founders because people want to support these independent brands that just have a fantastic hero product and a wonderful story behind them. And it's hard to sift through the number of brands to find them. And we want to make sure we're putting them at the forefront in our store.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think inclusivity also can include people who are drinking no alcohol or lower alcohol. So I think that's a good conversation too. Like inclusivity can mean people who are not drinking.
Exactly. Judgment free is really why I started Sèchey. I wanted a place where you could walk in, regardless of your relationship with alcohol, and find something that you loved. And by increasing the awareness, the availability, and then the education of these products, we're actually able to service you. Like, hey, what do you normally like to drink? Let's talk about it. Like, what do you love about that? What do you not like? Do you want low sugar? Is 0% alcohol important to you? Is it just about like one night a week and you want to pour from a can and make it easy? Or do you want the celebration around making a cocktail from amazing high quality ingredients?
So, especially here at Wine Enthusiasts, we don't like a misinformation as far as like calling alcohol healthy or alcohol can be enjoyed, but we need to realize that it's not healthy.
Yes.
Are some of these products that are alcohol free, would you consider them healthier?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on how you classify healthy because you do really need to be a aware consumer and look at the ingredients in the can. Just because it doesn't have alcohol does not mean it's healthy for you. There could be a lot of hidden sugar. There could be something added to the beverage that to make it shelf stable, even that you may want to just be aware of. But in general, when you remove alcohol from a product, you're going to reduce the sugar content and reduce the calories. So you could broadly classify alcohol free as healthier. It just depends on, the exact ingredients. So we really try to educate our associates and are working on same with our e-commerce, like taking you through a journey based on the ingredients because like as you shop in grocery, like gluten sometimes can trigger,
Mm-hmm.
grapefruit can trigger, generations that are taking medication. So we're really hyper aware and are working towards ways to make it easier for customers to shop the assortment based on their preference and on the ingredients in the beverage.
Okay, that's great. What about innovation? Have you seen like how are these spirits and wine, how do they taste? Do they taste like traditional wine or traditional spirits? Is the mouth feel similar?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And all of these, you know, every product's different. So I will speak to wine specifically first. We're really in wine 2.0, where the innovation has caught up to the flavor, and you can really find enjoyable red wines or white wines that are similar to their traditional counterparts. For the
Okay.
mouthfeel and spirits, that's the second category people are usually looking for. It's a little bit harder. We do have some brands that have added some magic to the liquid that does replicate mouthfeel, that it will taste great on its own over the rocks. But in general, the spirits you want to mix into a cocktail or with club soda or into your favorite drink. And I think we're on the cusp of wine 3.0, where the innovation in the category has come along so far that winemakers are looking at the grape differently and the vine differently, and knowing that they're making a wine that's then going to be de-alcoholized, or like how do you skip the de-alcoholization product from the beginning and create a wine that meets the needs of de-alcoholization without actually having to go through the process, because it's a pretty complex process. And then I'm also speaking with some producers that have yet to come to the US, and just trying to support them because I love what they're doing with the terroir or the grape or the process in making the wine that I find really innovative. So I'm excited to see what comes, because I personally am a wine drinker. I always have been, and I don't think I'll ever not be. So that is the most exciting thing for me right now, is like seeing where we're going with wine.
Yeah, that's and I feel like, beer's had a huge head start, right? Like there's been non-alcoholic or low alcoholic beer for years. So wine is a whole different process.
It is. And that's a great point. The fermentation, arrested fermentation for beer, and just the innovation of the category, true head start. That's why you're seeing, alcohol-free beer or beer made with 0.5% ABV, very easy to find. And really easy to find brands that do really well, and why you're seeing someone like Athletic Brewing Company have major investment from Dr. Pepper Keurig, because it is widely accepted now.
Yeah. Does your store offer a lot of tastings and events for people to become familiar with alternative drinking?
Yes. So because of my background in retail and my understanding of, how people shop, and us post-COVID really wanting to go someplace to experience, we've created a tasting salon in our stores where you can come in and there's a bar set up where the brands can do tastings, where we can, actually like highlight the products, because most people don't know what these products taste like and want to experiment with it, right? Like I don't want to commit to buying a $50 bottle of spirits without understanding what an alcohol-free gin tastes like. And we'll continue that in our Sèchey flagships. We don't want to be just a resource for the products. We really want to be like 360 education, including the tasting.
Yeah, that's a great point. You have e-commerce, so people who are not in South Carolina can still enjoy your products as well?
We do. We started the business with just e-commerce before I had a store, and I was actually just delivering locally around Charleston to see if people cared about alcohol-free products, and they did. And then we opened a store. So phase 2 for Sèchey is taking that e-commerce experience that exists and just elevating it the way that you would walk into our physical store and have just an amazing experience.
Awesome. Well, Emily, I just have one more question for you. What's in your glass? What are you drinking these days?
It's a great question. Well, it's warm here in Charleston. I really love alcohol-free rosé. And Groovy is in a little glass bottle. I drink their dry rosé. I also love Prima Pave and French Bloom. Both have excellent sparkling rosés. Joyous is another favorite. So, I could go on, but like if you haven't tried de-alcoholized wine, a sparkling rosé is a great place to start because it's very similar to traditional rosé.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. Nice speaking with you.
Whether it's for a week, a month, or for the foreseeable future, people are choosing to drink less. The beverage industry has been having conversations surrounding inclusivity for a while now. But those conversations really haven't included the no-low alcohol trend until very recently. Maybe it's time those inclusivity conversations include mindful drinking in NA culture. What are your thoughts? If you liked today's episode, we'd love to read your reviews and hear what you think. You can email us your comments and questions at podcast@wineenthusiast.net. And hey, why not tell your wine-loving friends to check us out too? Remember, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. You can also go to wineenthusiast.com/podcast for more episodes and transcripts. I'm Jacy Topps. Thanks for listening.